Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Boys and girls, keep your heads down because we got ourselves another drive-by cuting. Pop. Let's get started. 36:67, 23 minutes after the hour of 3. We have a screenshot here of another Q post, 2042 from August 31st. We're not going to go deep into this because this is just a screenshot from somebody who desperately needs to charge their phone. But there was some talk on 8kun as to whether or not this was Q or not. Turns out it was not, and Q states that right here. That's where we're going to start, where Q points out that it is fake. Sometimes silence is necessary in order to protect select public releases. And before we go on, I want to highlight this very curious looking JPEG right here. We're starting to find some interesting things in here, and maybe at some point when we see a final connection, I'll make a video on this. But I want to point out that it seems like there are a lot of different key searches here in these JPEGs. Anyway, sometimes silence is necessary in order to protect select public releases. B2 being Bill Barr, public statements past week. We're going to talk a little bit more about his statement in a future post here, but he obviously came out saying that he didn't really agree with the IG report, right? He seemed to think that there was some knuckleheadedry going on, and of course, we already knew that. Durham public statements past week, same similar thing, and he says, I've got criminal investigations to show for it. Durham start, Q start, right around the same time, right? 28th of October, 2017. I know. Now, there's some argument as to whether or not there was actually in the same day, but it was about a 24-hour period at the very least. But either way, it was still very curious, right? So Durham has been flying under the radar for quite some time, not so much anymore. Did you learn 4 FISAs last week regarding POTUS? No, we learned 4 FISAs last year regarding POTUS. We covered FISA extensively. If you've been following my channel for quite some time, you know this. We have covered this quite extensively. Now, going back to this, for those of you who are newer, I'm just going to cruise through this post a little bit to give you a general idea. But this was a special approval code for a visa that was set up by Aunt Loretta Lynch, who evidently left a paper trail for a special entry for Natalia Veselnitskaya. That ended up leading to a meeting with Manafort, which led to these 4 FISA warrants. The one that's been public that we're going to likely talk about the most has been the Carter Page one, who has never been charged with a crime. Then, of course, you've got George Papadopoulos, and he did serve a little bit of time, not very much, but he seems to think he's going to be very vindicated very soon. And then, of course, you've got Flynn, and his sentencing keeps getting moved down the line. There's a specific reason for that, because finally, when this whole thing falls apart, so will the case, and Flynn will never even need to be pardoned. It will just be thrown out, and of course he will be hopefully completely vindicated, as he should be. And then of course you've got my most curious character, Manafort, who's been put away hard, which seems to suggest to me Manafort has a lot on these people. But either way, these were the 4 FISA warrants that we're talking about. And then they talk about the umbrella surveillance, okay? So I'm spying on P, but P is talking to X. So now I got to spy on X. And X starts talking to Y, so now I got to spy on Y. And all their friends, so on and so forth. So this leads to a lot of spying, bulk data collection, umbrella surveillance. And that's what they're talking about. And that's how they essentially got to President Trump. If you really went and put a FISA out on President Trump, which you couldn't because he's not a foreign national, you would never be able to get that approved. Or at least I should say in a perfect world, you'd never get that approved. But keep in mind, President Trump wasn't the first one. Ted Cruz was likely one of the first. Okay, so this led to a ton of spying. Lots of people were getting spied on. And of course, these unofficial Five Eyes contacts were helping people do it, right? So we did learn 4 FISAs last week in the mainstream news, but if you've been following this channel for a while, you've known about it for quite some time. Non-public prior, well, like I just said, it was Carter Page was the only one that was supposed to be public. And Q just said, sometimes silence is necessary in order to protect select public releases. That very well could be because there's criminal investigations related with those. Don't know. We won't know until they're released, but there's obviously a reason why they're keeping it private, right? Cruz, FISA public soon. Yeah, Hannity's going to break it, and it's going to be some real big bombshell, right? It's going to be like, oh, and did you know there was a FISA on Ted Cruz? Thanks, Sean Hannity. Yeah, we did know for about a year. Let's move on. Post 3668, 32 minutes after the hour of 3. And if you'll remember, the last post was 23 minutes after the hour of 3. Q likes to reverse those numbers back and forth, 32 and 23. When a B-2 bomber is no longer stealth, think public statements made last week. What must that signal? Well, pretty obvious, right? I suppose if a B-2 bomber is flying stealthily overhead, you're not aware of it, so you're not aware of the danger. But if the B-2 bomber is no longer stealth, then it's not a B-2 stealth bomber. It's a B-2 in-your-face bomber, I guess. I don't know what the technical term is for that, but that's what we'll call it. Anyway, now you look up and you say, hey, that's a B-2 in-your-face bomber flying overhead, which leads me to wonder if it's going to drop a bomb on my face, which is a pretty fair question to ask when you see a B-2 in-your-face bomber, right? Planned, coordinated attacks on Barr coming. Yeah, they know they're in trouble now. And Barr has made no bones about it, right? So in comes the smear campaign. And sure enough, here we go. Big thanks to Lisa Mae Crowley for some of the source links today. She had them all pulled up for me. I really appreciate that. She does great work over there on Twitter. But here it is. Resolution 757 calling for the resignation and disbarment of the United States Attorney General William P. Barr and for other purposes. Nice. Public opinion is important. Information warfare, a traitor's justice. So who's the traitor that Q is referencing? Is he talking about James Nobody's Homie Comey? Is he talking about John Brennan? Are we talking about Adam Schiff? We don't really know, but either way, Q is calling out a few different traitors. But what this basically means is game on. It's in public now. This is the whole idea. Public opinion is important, and that's exactly why they have to go after Barr. They've done this already. They've gone after Barr before. But they kind of got, led off into another path, and now we're right back onto the same game. Well, it's too late for all this. Now, I want to take you over to another article, and once again, thanks to Lisa Mae Crowley. She had this drawn up. This was a great article from Molly Hemingway. And I'll leave it for you down below because it's rather long. 28 points here. 28 moments from bombshell Barr interview. And of course, we're not going to go through all of these because ain't nobody got time for that. But I do want to take you down to a couple of these here. Number 9. Response to Russia threats troubling. If intelligence officials were alarmed by the Russia threats as early as April 2016, as they claimed, surely the response should have been more than just, dangling a confidential informant in front of a peripheral player in the Trump campaign. Okay, so that makes sense, right? If indeed we were trying to protect the presidency and, of course, our quote-unquote democracy, which is actually a constitutional republic, if we were really trying to protect all of this, we would have done everything to sort this out. Instead, they did everything to tie it to Trump, and that's very telling, right? Number 10, FBI Wray very supportive of investigation into Russia probe. Barr said he and FBI Director Christopher Wray have discussed how important it is that not be allowed to happen, and we are both very cognizant of that. He is being very supportive, and we're working together on, trying to reconstruct what happened. People have to understand. One of the things here is that these efforts in 2016, these counterintelligence activities that were directed at the Trump campaign were not done in the normal course and not through the normal procedures as far as I can tell. And a lot of the people who were involved are no longer there. Number 11, spying is spying. Crawford noted that Barr has received criticism for referring to the widespread surveillance of the Trump campaign as spying. Barr responded, yeah, I guess it's become a dirty word somehow. It hasn't ever been for me. I think there is nothing wrong with spying. The question is always whether it's authorized by law and properly predicated, and if it is, then it's an important tool the United States has to protect the country. Yeah, we'd be kidding ourselves to think that spying doesn't go on, right? It happens everywhere in every single country, so that's just something that happens. And of course, if you get caught, you get caught and you deal with it how it is. That's kind of what you sign up for when you become a spy, right? So anyways, a lot of interesting takeaways here. Like I said, we're not going to cover them all, but I will leave it for you down below. Post 3669, 31 minutes after the hour of 3. This right here is part of what Q had said, but it was copied and pasted. And Anon did this on 8kun, and now Q is posting that, if that makes sense. But it's part of what Q was just saying. Did you learn 4 FISAs last week regarding POTUS? Non-public prior? Yeah, we learned it right around August 31st, 2018, which was when we saw that screenshot, right? Manafort, Papadopoulos, Page, and Flynn. And for those of you who don't know, this 0 and a 7 here is used as a man saluting. That's supposed to be the head right there, and the 7 is the long arm extending into a salute. That's what that is used for when people are typing. Anyway, Q gives us this OIG link right here. It says dates start will become important. And here it is from December 9th, 2019. DOJ OIG releases review of 4 FISA applications and other aspects of the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. DOJ Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, more like Borowitz, announced today the release of a review of 4 FISA applications and other aspects of the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. The DOJ Office of the Inspector General's OIG findings are summarized in the report's executive summary available at the links below. During this review, the OIG examined more than 1 million documents that were in the DOJ's and FBI's possession and conducted over 170 interviews involving more than 100 witnesses. The scope of the OIG's review included the decision to open an FBI investigation on July 31st, 2016, known as Crossfire Hurricane, and 4 individual cases on current and former members of the Trump campaign: George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and Michael Flynn. The early investigative steps taken and whether the openings and early steps complied with DOJ and FBI policies. Okay, well, keep in mind, Q was just saying that the dates of the start will become important. Q was also mentioning Ted Cruz, right? Well, the start of this was listed here as July 31st, 2016, but we know better, right? We've got some pictures and we've also got text messages going back and forth between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok suggesting that this was happening even before that. There's a reason why that's so important, and I just want to present it like such. Picture if you are your average everyday American, but you are a Trump hater. Keep in mind, we're pretending here, right? You're a Trump hater. And the reason you're a Trump hater isn't for any real specific reason other than the fact that you're just doing your everyday thing. You don't really have much time for news, so you only get what comes to you. And of course, what comes to you is what's off mainstream media and print, right? Is that Trump is bad, Orange Man bad, Russia, all these kinds of things. He's a racist, he's a whatever. You know what it is. So here you are hating Trump, not really understanding why. You know he messed with Russia, or at least that's what you're being told. You're not exactly sure what it means, but you just feel like he's messed around with Russia. All of a sudden, after a while, we start getting this narrative showing that there were investigations going on back in 2015. Well, we didn't know that Trump was going to win back in 2015. As a matter of fact, Trump didn't even enter the picture then. Like I said, they were already working on Ted Cruz. By the time they got into these FISA warrants, they were already covering up their spying. The FISA was to make it look legit, but this was going on for a very, very long time. So the importance of this, like I'm saying, is if you are that average everyday person who hates Trump but doesn't really know why, chances are you might be a little bit more easily swayed if you start to see that this story took place before Trump was even in the picture of the story. It gets so hard to blame Trump when he's not even a part of the picture at this point. Now we're talking about Ted Cruz. Okay, well, I don't really like Ted Cruz, but geez, that seems a little unfair. You see what I'm saying? This whole thing went down before they even took Trump seriously, and that's why it's so important. Because if you already have such a hardcore bias like the media has been planting for so long against Trump, you're going to hate Trump regardless. But if you're not really sure why, you're just thinking that, I'm just giving, kind of taking in what the news is giving me or whatever, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, all this went on years ago before Trump even really became a serious candidate, that doesn't seem like Trump's fault. You get the picture. The FBI's relationship with Christopher Steele, whom the FBI considered to be a confidential human source, its receipt, use, and evaluation of electronic reports from Steele, and its decision to close Steele as an FBI CHS, chapters 4 through 6. 4 FBI applications filed with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in 2016 and 2017 to conduct Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act surveillance targeting Carter Page, and whether these applications complied with DOJ and FBI policies and satisfy the government's obligations to the FISA court. And like I said, I think this will be the first thing to really blow wide open. The interactions of DOJ attorney Bruce Orr with Steele, the FBI, Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, and the State Department. Whether work Orr's spouse being Nelly performed for Fusion GPS implicated ethical rules applicable to Orr. Keep in mind she speaks Russian, and Orr's interactions with DOJ attorneys regarding the Manafort criminal case. Bruce and Nellie Orr are huge pieces to this story because they were the ones actually getting a lot of this information, right? And of course, they were the ones turning it around to the FBI. The FBI's use of undercover employees and CHSs other than Steele in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, whether the FBI placed any CHSs within the Trump campaign or tasked any CHSs to report on the Trump campaign, whether the use of CHSs and UCEs complied with DOJ and FBI policies. Wow, we're just using all kinds of letters now. And the attendance of a Crossfire Hurricane supervisory agent at counterintelligence briefings given to the 2016 presidential candidates and certain campaign advisors. All right, very interesting. So we're going to start seeing all four of these bust in the open. Of course, that's really essentially what Michael Horowitz was sent out to do. Michael Horowitz doesn't really want to bring it all down, but Michael Horowitz seems like he has to play ball. So he's going to do what he has to. This was going to come at some certain point anyway. And of course, Q knew that we knew, and I knew that you knew because you followed this channel and you knew that already. Post 3670, 4 minutes after the hour of 10, we get a Twitter link here. Q says scope and size far greater than you can imagine. It takes you to Enoch on Twitter, El Knuckle. We get a lot of interesting people posting as Anons. 21 minutes later, Laura Ingraham said farce on her show. Yeah, I saw this the other day. This was very cool. Thanks for pointing that out, Enoch. This was from 8kun. And you saw this Anon post, I'm on in 20, will say farce. And then we saw this on Laura Ingraham. Laura Ingraham says farce 21 minutes after an Anon on the board posted, I'm on in 20, will say farce. Check it out.
This is the Ingraham Angle back in Washington tonight. Now, before we begin our analysis of this farce of an impeachment, I don't know, excuse me, I'm coughing because I can't believe it's still going on. I can't.
Well, that looks like a farce in your face. It's a farce in your face. Scope and size far greater than you can imagine. Indeed, these mainstream media folks know exactly what is going on with QAnon. They follow just like you and I do. They maybe aren't able to say it just yet. They may not ask the question just yet. It's all good. They know what's up. Hollywood knows what's up. The world is paying attention. This scope and size is indeed far greater than you can imagine. And at some point, somebody will ask the question. I know a lot of people are real anxious for that, but just remember, once that's done, it's all over. Just saying. Let's move on. Post 3671, 15 minutes after the hour of 10. We get this graphic here talking about post 2397 from back in November of 2018. How do you remove installed blockade, D-class, D-class, D-class? How do you navigate around installed corrupt FBI, DOJ? Use a stealth bomber, and then we got 8 spaces right here. And in this graphic, they were spelling it out as Whitaker, being the former AG Whitaker. Well, it looks like Q is wanting to correct that. This is entitled B2, meaning Bill Barr. Then we get this Twitter status right here, and it is to an interview with Bill Barr on the Twitter status of Doc Rock 1007, which I think they're meaning to say. I know, or at least I think I do. Check it out.
Why aren't people going to prison for what they did to the president? And on the other side, throw Bill Barr in prison. And these things take time.
Snoop Dogg! Anyway, you get the idea, right? So, Bill Barr acting like a G. When does the B2 drop the first bomb? Well, I don't know. I don't predict dates. Bill Barr fit into 8 spaces. Indeed, it does. BILLBARR. Reconfigure graphic. Knowledge is power. Indeed it is. Let's move on. Post 3672, 21 minutes after the hour of 10. Q takes us back to December 12th, 2018. And this is post 2603, where we were asking, where is Huber? And I know it's Huber, but I like to say Huber. Anyway, we were hoping that Huber was going to talk about his findings in regards to the Clinton Foundation, and we were all excited about that. Turns out Huber wasn't even there. He was talking at another meeting, oddly enough, talking about martial law. What if there's another prosecutor outside of D.C. assigned by Sessions with the same mandate and authority? Well, we know now that that is Durham, right? Huber is the same kind of thing. He is a Utah guy, and he's actually been very relevant. He's made a lot of different arrests in regards to human trafficking. It seems like he's doing a great job out there. But he wasn't necessarily the person that we thought Q was talking about. One for the history books, not long now. Q, and this is about a year ago, so I think Q is reminding us that this stuff is starting to rear its head. Now, I do want to point out real quick that the first two letters here are D6. We've seen D6 references, D5 references, of course, a lot from Q, but Q just the other day was pointing out that D1 through 6, we had seen numerous events, and Q had linked it to numerous events happening in the first 6 days of December. Now, whether or not that is what this is referencing, I'm not really sure, but that's what it was referencing last time. We also have some sections in the Mueller report that are redacted that could very well have to do with our D5 and D6. We're not really sure just as of yet, but if you're looking into these different picture titles, note that there is a D6 there, and of course at the end is the SIS, which I always take to be the Senior Intelligence Services, which many people think is another one of those keystone references. But anyway, there you go. But it looks like we are talking about Durham, and I think Q is also implying that it's not long now. Let's move on to 3673, 26 minutes after the hour of 10. Month, day Durham initiated. Well, that was October 28, 2017. Same month and day Q public campaign initiated. How many coincidences before mathematically impossible? Well, I don't know. I'm not much of a numbers guy, but I got a numbers guy. How many is that?
4.
It's 4. It was over before it began. Q. Post 3674, 33 minutes after the hour of 10. We get a picture of Durham right here. Pretty serious looking dude. Doesn't even look like he's got time for the picture. He's just like, just take the dang thing already. I'm trying to indict some knuckleheads. Ain't got time for your high school yearbook crap. But while I'm at it, hey, John Bolton, I see your mustache, your oppressive looking mustache, and I raise you. Mustache, goatee, combo, hair all over the front of my face. What are you going to do about that, John Bolton? What if other AG equivalents in other foreign countries are also currently investigating use of their intel apparatus for illegal purposes? Well, keep in mind the head of Burisma has already been indicted. They have, and this guy told us about it the other day. Was the chain of command followed? Well, it depends. The good guys, I'm assuming so. If you want to get this right, they probably did. But if they are talking about the knuckleheads, then indeed that was not the case. Then Q mentions Huber again in these DOJ planes and the Clinton Foundation. All right, so for those of you who've been following QAnon, you may know where this is going. But if you're not for a while, I want to point out that in August of last year, we had this odd story of these planes. They were DOJ planes, and they landed in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. And nobody reported it. We did on this channel, but it was actually a report from a radio station. A radio station host caught this, and that's how it ended up getting out. And of course, a few QAnon stations were covering it or whatever. But we saw these DOJ planes, and they were going back and forth from DC to Little Rock, a couple of them. And we also knew that at the same time, Jeff Sessions was in the area. He made a stop in nearby, I think it was Hot Springs, Arkansas, but it was just outside of Little Rock. It wasn't in Little Rock. But anyway, Clinton Foundation, of course, is there, and they loaded onto that plane Braxes and Braxes. Now, what were on those Braxes and Braxes, I don't really know, but we all suspected, and we all had a feeling that it was probably something big. We knew it was something big because nobody was talking about it. Like I said, it was a radio host that actually broke the story on Twitter. So we don't know, but I'll bet Huber knows, I'll bet this guy knows, and I'll bet Jeff Sessions knows. So what you think about that? That's what he's saying. He's like, yeah, I know what's on those boxes. What do you think about that? I'm not going to tell you either, because my lips are tight. My lips are tight, and they're covered by all this hair on my face. Let's move on. Post 3675, 38 minutes after the hour at 10, we get this picture from an Anon who says, it's scary just how good you guys are. And of course, Q is calling it out, and for good reason. Pretty sweet light display here. Mary Qmap, very, very nice. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Hotel Antwerp Billard Palace in Belgium. Very, very cool. So cheers to all you Anons out there in Belgium. Very nice people out there, except for maybe in the city of Brussels. But other than that, everybody's really nice out there. Very cool place, fantastic food. And obviously some cool Christmas decorations out there too. This is very sweet. So thanks for doing that, whoever did that. I do want to point out that the beginning of this JPEG has an ELN in it. We've seen this before, which leads me to think that it's part of a set somehow. Maybe not with the pictures, but it might be a set of something greater. So for those of you who are checking this out, you can let me know. But let's move on to the next post. 3676, 47 minutes after the hour of 10. Looks like James, I don't have a homie, Comey. We never thought she'd lose. He's out there panhandling with his McDonald's cup and his Skechers shoes. Yikes, what happened to you, nobody's homie? Also want to point out that like the previous picture, we have this ELIZ, which we've also seen before. So again, it looks like another part of a set. I don't think it's just a matter of posting memes. I have a feeling that Q is referring us to something else here within these searches. So if you do the book searches, or if you do other kinds of kind of tracing searches or whatever, picture searches, you guys can let us know what you think. But it does appear to be part of a set. Let's move on to this most recent post here, 3677. 10 minutes after the hour 11, we get a Twitter status right here. And it takes you to follow QAnon. We stand united. Nice on you for getting shouted out by Q. Adam, they didn't buy your... Hey, I can't say that. Angry constituents fired back at Adam Schiff in California over his abuse of power. Let's check it out, shall we? Well, all in all, I'd say that went pretty well. Fake news hiding the truth knowingly. We the people enjoy the show Q.
Got a flashback aside, take you back.
Taking you back to post 3485. This was back in the 25th of July, where Q was taking us back even further to February to some previous posts. But let me take you to this second one here, which is oddly entitled with a D2 at the beginning of it. We just saw one with a D6. Now we have a D2. So this was back in February, even though this post was from 25th of July. But we were talking about Adam Schiff, who spent 2 years knowingly and unlawfully lying and leaking, should be forced to resign from Congress. Knowingly. Leaking investigations can lead to forced resignations. Well, that's exactly what Adam Schiff was doing, right? Knowingly disseminating false information is illegal. Gang of 8 Intel Q, which is what I think we're going to find here, and that likely could lead to a resignation of little Adam Schiff. Now, keep in mind, too, in post 3638, we saw this just the other day on the 3rd of December. We saw where Q was posting about treason, right? And as you can see, I have the word knowingly highlighted there. So is this the traitor that Q is talking about, little Adam Schiff? It would seem to be the case. And this would also suggest with the James 8 corny and all the 8 stuff going around that we saw. I talked the other day about these curious tweets that kept referencing 8. We had Mika Brzezinski, who was talking about the 8 cages up. And we also had Keith Olbermann talking about 8 levels of hell and da-da-da-da. Were they referring to this Gang of 8 Intel? It could be possible. I'm not really sure. But either way, Q most certainly is. And Q is responding to Adam Schiff, who is having a tough time with the public speaking these days. All right, Patriots, those are your Q posts for now. All my alternate links are down below. I highly suggest joining one of those. If you want to send me any information, my email is down below. If you want to send me something old school, my P.O. box is down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is linked down below. It's all in the video description. And I'm going to get out of here. So until next time, stay funky.